I don't know if you happen to catch our latest astronauts, Glenn, take their trip to space, literally comparing themselves to Alan Shepard, who walked on the moon. I mean, literally, like multiple of our newest astronauts compared themselves to Alan Shepard. Well, it hasn't worked out so well for Gayle King, who's at the opposite end of the time schedule on CBS. She's in the mornings. This news just posted via News Nation. The morning show over there is in third place. It's doing terribly, and it has been for some time. They were averaging like mid to late February, 2 million viewers in the overall and 357,000 in the 25 to 54 demo. All right, so call it 2 million and 350,000 in the overall and in the key advertising demo. Well, right before the flight, their numbers surged. People wanted to see what was going to happen, and they tuned in. And that morning, they had 3.9 million viewers and almost 600,000 in the demo. After the flight, viewers fled. News Nation's reporting this. Following 3 days, the numbers cratered to an average of 1.9 million people, a 51% loss. The demo fell down to 339,000, a 43% loss, below where they had been even going into the event. Then Monday, April 21st, just a week after the flight, the demo fell even further. Now it's down to 311,000. The total number stayed at the terrible 1.9 million. An industry insider telling News Nation, this stunt should have never been greenlit by CBS News to begin with. Gayle tries to be this relatable morning show anchor who claims she's down to earth and then not only takes this gazillion-dollar flight, but then attacks people for getting mad at her. It's a complete crock. And just in case people haven't seen this one, this is one we did not play. We played a lot of SOTs from these women, but we've got Gayle in a very short soundbite saying the following. SOT 28.
Two of the astronauts, I still have a hard time calling myself an astronaut.
She literally is calling herself an astronaut. She doesn't understand why we don't celebrate her, and she's probably really confused as to why her ratings are falling.
Yeah, it's like taking a flight from Detroit to, San Jose and then being like, hey, I just rode on this aircraft. Now I'm a pilot.
It's turbulent.
It's hard to think of myself a pilot, but like I am a pilot. I actually did fly on this thing that flew through the air and landed safely. And also, I'm not saying like you're supposed to be the most serious news person if you're on a morning show. Like, the idea is to kind of be like friendly and to wake up and have people feel comfortable with you in the morning or as they get ready for work or whatever. Still, it is a news show. And she didn't just go on this thing. She went on with like she sat next to Katy Perry, just one of the most absurd pop stars who just made, I think, the worst joke of herself when she came down and like kiss the ground and talk about the spirituality of that 7-second flight. And all of this is just continuously eroding any credibility that they have to claim that they have any authority at all. I mean, they're making themselves more and more ridiculous. And also, as you say, it just kind of reeks of somebody who wants to be a very wealthy celebrity and show off that opulence, as opposed to somebody who is in any way relatable. You're talking about like the people hand chosen by the second richest man on the planet who put his fiance along with Katy Perry on this flight. It was a cringe fest from start to finish. And then she goes on and says, yeah, I'm still a little humble. I don't really want to call myself an astronaut, even though I am. What do they think people in this country how they're going to react to that sort of thing? And this is what I'm saying, Megyn, is that they live in this world that is so detached from anything other than themselves that they just have lost the ability to understand how they're perceived by other people. And that is really one of the worst attributes you can possibly have if you're in the public arena, is to just completely lose the ability to understand how others are perceiving you.
She went out, Gayle King, after she got blowback, and among other things, said to her critics, have you been? Have you been? That's my question. No, Gayle, no one's been. Because it cost $1 million to get on Jeff Bezos's spaceship. And as some folks online, News Nation points out, responded, no, Gayle, I'm trying to buy eggs. Gayle, if I had that money, I'd be paying off the mortgage on my house, right? Like, so out of touch. Ms. Oprah's best friend on David Geffen's yacht, always at Oprah's side doing all the billionaire excursions. Have you been? And then, as if that wasn't going to persuade people, she actually played the sexist card. We played this before, but it doesn't get old. Here it is.
Please don't call it a ride. That is not a friggin' ride. Whenever a man goes up, you have never said to an astronaut, boy, what a ride. You know, we duplicated the same trajectory that Alan Shepard did back in the day, pretty much. No one called that a ride. It was called a flight. It was called a journey, because a ride implies that it's something frivolous or something that's lighthearted. There was nothing frivolous about what we did and the machine that we were on, and what it took for the people to get that machine up and running, to get us up and get us back down safely. So, you know, I'm very disappointed and very saddened by it. And I also say this, what it's doing to inspire other women and young girls, please don't ignore that. I've had so many women and young girls reach out to me, and men too, by the way, men too, that say, wow, I never thought I could do that, but I see you doing it at this stage of my life. Who would have thunk it? Not me. And how inspired they are.
Okay, you better be inspired. And if you call it a ride, you're a sexist pig.
It was a ride, Megyn. It was a carnival ride for rich people. Of course, that's what it was. And like, the reason we distinguish what they did from actual astronauts, by the way, many of whom are women, we have real female astronauts who might inspire like young girls to think about a career in becoming astronauts, is because they didn't do any of the training. They just sat there. Other people were responsible for the ride that they were on. Like, this is so basic and so obvious. Who puts these things in these people's heads that, you know, that lets them get off of this ride and say, how dare you not take seriously our role as astronauts? When you have people who train their whole lives, they go to, you know, engineering school and aeronautics school in order to study the art of being an astronaut, the science involved in going to space. And they dressed up in a costume and went on a little ship ride for 11 minutes. And some carnival rides actually take more than that. And then they come back and they're like, how dare you call it a ride?
No wonder the ratings are plummeting. It's actually very interesting to me that there's a real backlash. I mean, if you just Google Blue Origin space ride, every single thing that comes up is the backlash, how angry people are about this, how absurd they thought it was, what a vanity play it was, obviously. It had exactly the opposite of the one Gayle and the others thought it would. This also reported in that same report, Katy Perry struggling to sell tickets for her Lifetimes tour despite promoting it during the 11-minute space tourism journey by holding up the set list printed on a butterfly to the camera, as they write, instead of, you know, looking outside the window at Earth. So it's like, the reason it's so great is because people are onto it. You know, they didn't get away with it, Glenn. They've been called out at every turn to the point now that they're running from it. No, they don't even want to talk about it now.
Yeah, you know, Megyn, I'm sure you remember, you know, like in the 80s, they sent the first woman into space on the Columbia spaceship, which ended up being, you know, tragically destroyed. And they picked a teacher from New Hampshire, Krista McAuliffe. And she wasn't spending, you know, millions of dollars. She wasn't like a pop star or a TV star. She was chosen precisely because she represented the ordinary American. And the idea was, we want to open this, you know, transformative experience to ordinary people. This is exactly the opposite what they ended up doing. And also for Gayle King to talk about her like she's some sort of feminist pioneer, like she's the first person ever to go into space, when, as I said, you had Krista McAuliffe, but also like a good number now of like actual trained female astronauts who go into space. Is it really surprising that people reacted in the way that they're reacting?
I mean, not only that, but there was another woman on board. I don't know who she is, but I watched some of the interview that they did when they got off of their spacecraft after their mission. And the question was like, what does this mean for you? And she's like, you know, this is for all survivors. I'm like, survivor? It turns out this woman alleged that she had been the victim of a rape many years earlier when she was at Harvard, and has become like a sexual assault activist now. And she brought up with her some medical bracelet, I guess, from when she went to the hospital and made this claim. And she made the thing, I'm like, must everything, truly, this is the left's idea of like what it means to be a woman. You are about the abuse that men have heaped upon you. You are about the sexist pigs who refer to your space mission as a ride. Or you are Lauren Sanchez, where you are literally getting a suit that unzips so you can show off your tits while you're on your way to space. And then the cherry on top when they come back, lecturing us on how there was nothing frivolous about what they did up there with the Kardashians and Oprah on the sidelines watching Glenn. It's got everything that the left thinks it is to be a woman.
Yeah, I think that the people who actually make the biggest differences in terms of, we have a conception of what this particular kind of job entails, even in politics or in industry or whatever, a CEO is a man, and then you have the first CEO as a woman. The people who make the actual differences are the people who just go and do their jobs and aren't constantly banging on the table and demanding attention and saying, isn't it amazing that even though I'm a woman, I've been able to become the CEO? You have gay people in public life who just go into public life, are open about it, but don't call attention to it. You have Black people who do that. What this was it was almost like a parody of a social justice crusade. Like, we're going to get these 6 women, none of whom have the slightest experience, whose only qualification is that they are women. We're purposely going to make it an all-woman fight so we can celebrate feminism. And it always ends up being so artificial and so contrived. And of course, then to add, like the ultimate victim of somebody who's a survivor of sexual assault, It just is the kind of thing that I think ends up being counterproductive, because it creates this perception of women as people who can only make achievements if there's some special carve out for them, if they assume a victim role. It's kind of a very regressive way, actually, of looking at the role of all sorts of people who didn't used to perform these kinds of jobs. Whereas the ones who I think actually make the biggest difference are the ones who just go and be astronauts and go into space and do their job without constantly calling attention to what their demographic is. Those are the people who actually end up shaping society in a real way, because they're being so genuine about it.
They just couldn't get it. They could not get it through their heads. They are all Democrat leftists from the look of it. I mean, we know a few of them are. And so they just don't think that way. They think everyone's going to celebrate them bringing up their trauma or their breasts or their heroics or lectures on how we need to refer to their flight, because if you don't call them sheroes, you're a sexist pig. This is leftist thought. It's on display. And that's why it kind of gets to a bigger point of, can the left get past this? The Democrat Party's wrestling with this right now. We over here are just looking at them, wondering what their next move is, because this sort of woke, very progressive cancer that they're dealing with is eating away their own party. And I've said from the beginning, I think they're stuck, because they can't excise this thinking from their party. It's too deeply ingrained. It's been ingrained K through college. They're true believers in it now. If they cut off that arm, they're not going to have a whole party. They're not going to survive without it, because it's just too infested.
I mean, they are losing, as you know, groups that they thought they had owned lock, stock, and barrel forever, no matter what it is that they did. And there's a lot of complex reasons for that. But if you look at the kind of the ethos and the sentiments being expressed by, say, Black voters who would never in their entire lives have considered voting Republican before, whose families were members of the Democratic Party for generations, or Latinos or LGBTs or women or any of those groups that have traditionally been more aligned with the Democratic Party, I think one of the things you hear is this kind of exhaustion about the Democratic Party, about American liberalism, constantly imposing on them the burden to identify first and foremost, not as a member of society, not as an American, not as somebody trying to support their family, not as someone trying to get ahead, but based on these demographic groups, this insistence that you identify first and foremost, based on these demographic groups that at the end of the day don't really have much of an impact on the way it is in which you live your life.
Tariff wars, stubborn inflation. No wonder gold has been routinely hitting all-time highs. In volatile markets like the one we have now, do not sit on the sidelines with your head in the sand. You can take control and safeguard your savings. That's why so many Americans today are turning to Birch Gold Group. They have helped tens of thousands convert an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. Is it time for you to hedge against economic instability with gold? To learn how to own physical gold in a tax-sheltered account, text MK to the number 989898. Birch Gold will send you a free, no-obligation info kit. Again, text MK to the numbers 989898. With an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau and countless 5-star reviews, Birch Gold has helped so many protect their savings with gold. It took us decades to get into the tangled mess they're trying to unpack now in D.C. How long is it going to take for us to get out of it, and at what cost? Text MK to 989898 today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.